So our group members include Hannah, Margot, Bridget, and myself, Ashley, and we chose reactive attachment disorder. Reactive attachment disorder is rare, but a very serious condition found in infant and younger children where the child does not establish healthy attachment or bonding with their parents or caregivers. There are two types of RAD, inhibited and disinhibited RAD. Inhibited RAD is a hypervigilant type where a child won't act the way they feel, and disinhibited RAD is where a child has no attachment to anyone and has an inability to socialize and attach. Children that exemplify RAD characteristics would have been disrupted in their early life enough that it affects future relationships. This can lead to behaviors such as anger, fear of losing anyone, lack of trust, lack of self-worth, fear of getting close to anyone, difficulty relating to others, and a need to be in control. This can create a very unsafe feeling, and reactive attachment disorder can develop if a child's basic needs are not met. RAD can be treated, and new stable relationships can develop with time. Some treatments for reactive attachment disorder can include a psychological counseling, parent or caregiver counseling, parent or caregiver education, learning positive child and caregiver interactions, and creating a stable, nurturing environment. We will be going over reactive attachment disorder within a counseling setting. Understanding what RAD is can help to understand the root causes and how it affects development from person to person. Each person is very unique in their own way, and each individual will need different treatments and help that is suitable for them. According to Shore, human connection is key, and anyone with counseling must understand the critical value human connection brings to the value of human life. There is not much extensive research for therapies for RAD, but it is shown universally that a stable environment is the leading factor. RAD is an important concept to understand and be able to notice within a counseling setting. We also explore the effect of reactive attachment disorder within minority populations. There has not been extensive research on minority populations. There's been no correlation between RAD and specified genders or being a part of a particular minority. There has been some correlation found with children within foster care due to neglect and lack of affection within a child's early life. There's also a connection with international adoption and RAD because many of them have spent time within the social work system and constant environmental changes without stability. Lastly, we will cover the two different types of RAD and discuss further treatments and interventions. RAD can be a challenge to diagnose due to the several variations of other diagnoses that can be attached to a child. RAD is manifested in the midst of other diagnoses like social anxiety, mood, and psychotic disorders. The main causes is an unstable environment and traumatic histories. Treatment is crucial in order to diagnose this disorder because that is how it can be diagnosed from other disorders such as anxiety or mood disorders. First, we will look at RAD in a counseling setting presented by Hannah.
All right. So, RAD in counseling, I'll start with what kind of research has been done in the field for what type of intervention should be happening. And then I'll further go into how on a broader spectrum, broader scale, that RAD can be affecting counseling. So as of 2009, there are not many empirically supported therapies for RAD. However, the largest helping factor, as Ashley stated before, within this disorder is a stable environment. Overall, the research for this disorder is small and have only brought conclusions as of 2019 as to which preventative measures are best, some of which has to do with the limited assumption that only children under 5 should be receiving the diagnosis. This, unfortunately, is not totally correct according to Driscoll, Smith College School for Social Work affiliate. It is still possible to have those issues as one ages. It's just less common after the age of 5. Another overarching finding from the research is that holding therapy, one of these therapies within the research is not found to be effective and is actually harmful for treating RID, according to Mercier in a 2013 article. Holding therapy was a treatment meant for attachment issues, and it started in the 70s and had used restraining techniques. Although these techniques are not used today for obvious reasons, techniques like these still lingered. For example, coercion within therapy. These techniques continue to be further refined up to now, but with further caution, which is why no definite therapy has emerged as of yet. And on the next slide, we'll see that, however, although these types of therapies have, it is only partially helpful to define something by what it is not. So the types of therapies that have been found helpful are ones like art therapy, which helps clients to find a way to communicate their affections effectively. But why does this even matter to the general population that choose to go to therapy? Although reactive attachment disorder is relatively uncommon, people with relational problems are not. By understanding a more uncommon disorder, it can help broaden understanding towards relational issues in general. Things like empathy, compassion, and reciprocity are things that everybody needs and should have. And especially in this class, through development, we see that those things are important for having reciprocating relationships. And according to research, there are actually entire hemispheres of the brain that develop from relational interactions with one's caregiver that contribute to those things, formation of empathy, compassion, and reciprocity. See, these are the basis for our being within relationships. It is also important to have a broad scope of issues that people may bring into therapy. Overall, we can see that human connection is key, and counseling for anyone has its basis in that. So when approaching counseling, because people are intensely unique, it is also important to understand that human connection is the key. So in conclusion, that is why reactive attachment disorder is important for any type of therapy. Now moving on to Margot and her analysis of reactive attachment disorder in minority populations.
All right. Yes. Hi, my name is Margot, and I'm going to be talking about reactive attachment disorder and minority populations. As I was doing my research, it was interesting to find that there really has not been much research done on specific minority populations that are affected by this fairly rare disorder. I know that this disorder as a whole is generally new, and research in many different areas is still being done. So with what I did find, I looked at gender, ethnicity, and then children specifically in foster care and children who are adopted. So regarding gender, there was found to be no correlation between a specific gender and the possibility or probability of that child being diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder. So genders does not seem to be affected as of now. There does not seem to be that more males or more females tend to have this disorder. With ethnicity, again, there was no correlation between RAD and being of a certain minority or ethnicity. There was some research done that child maltreatment is a really big portion of reactive attachment disorder, which is found to be of a higher percentage of children who are African American or of a multi-ethnic background. But again, that has no correlation to the specific ethnicity. It's simply that has to do with the treatment of the child. So next, for the two categories, we have children that are in foster care and adopted children. And most of the research that I found had specifically to do with these two groupings. And when we look at the major issues and aspects that correlate with reactive attachment disorder, again, that's human connection in a stable environment. and specifically with children in foster care, those two things are highly lacking. They lack human connection because they don't have a stable environment. They're tossed from home to home, and they lack ever having a real parental figure. And my mom actually works at an organization that helps kids that have aged out of the foster care system. And so I'm sure that she has dealt with clients that have had this disorder because of a lot of the trauma that they've gone through. It makes sense that they would be at higher risk for that. So the common neglect and maltreatment before entering the foster care system, typically they've been abused in some sort of form or fashion. And so that abuse really leads to some intense trauma that can form into this disorder, as well as a lack of secure attachments early on in life. Again, that human connection portion that's so necessary for each person is severely lacking in kids that are in the foster care system, because the reason that they're in the foster care system is likely due to neglect and maltreatment before, and they typically don't get very good care in the foster care system as well. And so the attachments that they have are severely lacking, therefore putting them at very high risk of having this disorder. So lastly, we'll look at adopted children. And so this was specifically looking at international adoption. And so many children adopted internationally have spent time in other institutions and experience reactive attachment disorder. However, there are also many children who show resilience despite their unfortunate upbringing. And so again, within adoption, they've probably been given to many different homes and different institutions before they were adopted. But the redeeming factor here is that not all adopted children, of course, are going to have this disorder, and that children are very resilient. And so there seems to be a higher chance that through adoption, they're able to either grow out of the disorder or to not ever fully experience it and be diagnosed with it. So I'm interested to see how in the future that there'll be more research that will help explain what are the factors and that are part of reactive attachment disorder, as well as what specifically minority populations are at risk for having this disorder. And so next we have Bridget, and she will be talking through some biblical connections with reactive attachment disorder.